In this next episode of our Jerusalem from Genesis to Jesus series, I travel back in time 3,000 years to explore the pivotal time in Bible history when Jerusalem became the capital of Israel. This is Jerusalem. The Bible tells us that this city was chosen by God for His eternal dwelling place. And yet, even after Israel escaped from slavery in Egypt and settled here, Jerusalem remained a Canaanite stronghold in the heart of Israel's beloved promised land for hundreds of years. That is, until one of Israel's most beloved kings, King David, conquered the Canaanite fortress and purchased Mount Moriah, the specific location God chose for His temple. So I invite you to travel back through time about 3,000 years to the critical moment in Jerusalem's history when the time had finally come for Jerusalem to be the eternal capital of the kingdom of Israel. There's just something about Jerusalem. It is one of those places on earth where I feel at home and my faith feels alive. But what really makes this city special is that according to the Bible, God Himself chose it for His home, so to speak. But how did Jerusalem become such a special city? And why Jerusalem of all places in the Promised Land? I talked to a few of my Orthodox Jewish friends to hear what they had to say about this time in Jerusalem's Bible story. Okay, so David comes here hundreds of years after Abraham and comes to this place, which is not yet Jerusalem. Talk to me about why. Why does David choose this Jebusite city to be the capital of his kingdom?
Fascinating story. The children of Israel, the people of Israel, came into the land of Israel with Joshua hundreds of years before. And throughout the book of Judges, judges from different tribes led Israel, but there was no unity. And David, even though he came from the strongest tribe, Judah, recognized that it is of utmost importance that there be unity in the commonwealth of Israel, in the nation of Israel. And so even though he could have, and in fact did, he did start out by making his capital city in Hebron, which was the capital of the Judahite tribal lands. He recognized, even though it would not be a particularly politically astute move to move out of Judah and to move into the spot between Judah and Benjamin, if we could somehow bring Judah together with Joseph, then that will ultimately bring to complete unity. And you can be sure that David had a lot of pushback from that idea from his own Judean tribe.
Right.
And it wasn't so easy either, because Jebus, that city, as you mentioned, was one of the few spots in the entire land of Israel that had not been conquered until that point, from way back from the time of Joshua. But that was exactly what gave it an opportunity to be a point of unity, because nobody had it yet. Nobody would be able to say, aha, choose me, Monty, choose me, David, I want to be the spot. No, none of you are going to be the spot, so that all of you can be the spot. And that was the unifying factor in David's idea to be in Jerusalem.
Now, he didn't choose the Jebusite city because it was easy to conquer. How did he do it?
So today we're sitting in Jerusalem, but Jerusalem in those days, the city of Jebus, was only this small spot. If I may turn for a moment, this, as you can see, the Golden Dome of the Temple Mount, bring it down. It's a little hard to tell what it is, but basically it was almost a shoestring of a city coming down to pretty much at the top of where these yellow flowers are. That whole area was very, very much fortified by the Jebusites with a tremendously big wall, and that wall was found in those archaeological expeditions and that archaeological dig. But exactly how it was that David asked his conquerors, his officers, to figure out a way to get through to through that wall is something that to this day is not exactly clear.
At the time of King David, Jerusalem, or Jebus, was a strong and fortified city that would have been difficult to capture. So it is fascinating that both the Bible and archaeology provide clues for how David and his men may have succeeded. David's just kind of developing the kingdom, and he comes to this Jebusite city and wants to conquer it. He wants it for his capital. So talk to us about this story, because there's some more recent, I would say, archaeological finds that have maybe helped connect that to us a little bit.
Okay, so I'll just read this one verse, and we learn, first of all, that David was a king. He initially only ruled over Judea, and then he expanded, of course, after he defeated the Saul camp, etc. So he rules in Judea for 7 years, and then he's going out to, he finished the war with Saul, and now, as you said, establishing his kingdom. On that occasion, David said, "Those who attack the Jebusites shall reach the," and here I'm going to use the Hebrew word, tzinor, shall reach the tzinor and strike down the lame and the blind who are hateful to David. This word tzinor, never before used in the Bible. And whenever you have a word like that, you have no way of knowing what it means.
Right.
Now, it just so happens that in modern Hebrew, the word tzinor means a water pipe. Like your plumbing pipes in your house, that's what the word is. A tzinor is a pipe.
Right.
But in the time of the Bible, or, why is that word called a water pipe today? Because of this context. They figured it out based upon the rest of the story that this must have had something to do with a water pipe. Jerusalem has no water.
Right.
It is relying upon bringing water into the city from the surrounding area. So the understanding has been, he had to control the water, and once you control the water, you can easily conquer the city.
Right.
But what that word actually meant and what it referred to, no one knew. And of course, modern archaeology has found all kinds of things. And today they have a real understanding of what they were touching, what water systems were in place, and what this whole battle was about.
Right. Don't go away. When we come back, Danny the Digger and I explore archaeological excavations that may reveal the secret to Jerusalem's capture. I was a pastor for over 20 years before I first went to Israel, only to realize that I had been totally disconnected from the roots of my faith. Since then, I've been on a journey of discovery, and my faith has come alive in ways I never could have imagined. I'm Jeff Futers, Director of First Century Foundations, and I am excited to invite you on my journey to the foundations of our faith, to discover your part in a Bible story that isn't over yet. First Century Foundations exists to reconnect Christians to the foundations of Christianity. And we do this by creating Bible-based media focused on Israel and the Jewish roots of our faith. But we don't just reconnect you to Israel's history, we help you participate in what God is doing in Israel today by connecting you to over 70 incredible ministries in Israel who desperately need our support. Will you partner with us? Together, we'll explore Israel's significant past while doing our part to ensure that Israel has a bright future. Conquering the city of Jebus would have been no easy feat, and I was excited to see what archaeological excavations have revealed from this significant time in Jerusalem's history. So, I met up with my friend, Danny the Digger, in the ancient city of David to try and solve the secret to Jerusalem's capture. So Danny, we're underground. Tell us where we are right now.
This is a very significant underground. We are underneath biblical Jerusalem.
Okay.
The city of David, as we call it today, is above your head. And this is an underground passage leading to the water source, leading to the Gihon spring.
Okay.
But the chisel marks are 4,000 years old.
Yeah,
we now
that's amazing.
know with high level of certainty that they were done already in the Middle Bronze Age, which makes it Canaanite.
Right.
Makes it from the time of Melchizedek, the book of Genesis, the time of Abraham.
Wow.
Okay? And a very interesting note is how David eventually conquered Jerusalem. The Bible is very ambiguous. It mentions, it doesn't mention a battle. It tells us of him cursing blind and lame people, whatever that means. And then a term which meaning is very strange, vayiga batzinor. He touched a pipe.
Okay.
What kind of a pipe? What is it talking about? So one possibility raised when Charles Warren, a British engineer and scholar, found this for the first time in the 19th century, is that he climbed through this pipe, shaft, underground passageway from the water source into the city, opened the gates, and then his forces took over.
Amazing.
Maybe this is a key to one of the most important chapters in biblical history.
Sure. And he didn't have the stairs.
No, of course not. He had to, either he had inside support by a rope or some ladders he could use. I mean, look at the depth of this.
I know, it's crazy.
Okay, he had to know what he's doing. And he managed. And he took over Jerusalem and he establishes it as his new capital of his new united monarchy. And he buys the top of the mountain where his son will build the temple. Okay, but Jerusalem is established possibly through what happened right here.
Thank you, Danny. Another mystery possibly solved. Possibly. Having captured Jerusalem, the Bible tells us that King David built his palace here. Yet this was not enough for David. One of his greatest passions was to find a permanent home for God's tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant, where God manifested his presence. And I've always found it so intriguing that David actually purchased land he had already conquered for this purpose. So David conquers Jebus, the Jebusite city, but then we also have a story that he actually purchases the top of the hill as well. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, so first of all, there's a lot of different things going on here.
Right.
David brings the ark up to the city of David. And as you said, he purchases this what becomes the Temple Mount. So the interesting thing is that purchase, I think, is fascinating because we have, and this story, by the way, is told twice in very end of 2 Samuel and in the book of Chronicles. And I believe in the book of Chronicles, it is connected much more closely with the bringing up of the ark
right.
to Jerusalem. But I just want to focus for a moment on the story as it is recorded at the end of 2 Samuel. It's the very, very end. It closes the book, essentially. Okay? And what happens is he has just, there's been a famine, there's been a punishment. Things are a mess, okay? And and David all these people have died, in this terrible plague that God strikes. And then we have this angel that is coming up against Jerusalem with a sword in his hand. And David sees this, okay? And clearly this is, okay, now the plague is going to hit Jerusalem. And as soon as that happens, God stops the angel. And David at that point says, he recognizes his sin in this whole thing and he confesses his sin, okay? And then what happens? First of all, he sees where is it that angel is standing. He's standing at the threshing floor of a piece of property that is owned by someone called Aravna or Arnan. Again, in 2 Samuel, he's called Aravna, he's called Arnan in Chronicles. He's a Jebusite. Now, this is after the city has been conquered by the Jebusites. It is from the Jebusites. It's no longer a Jebusite city, but clearly this man owns a piece of property, which I find to be very interesting, which has relevance to us today. Just because we conquer the land doesn't mean that we are going to steal a piece of private property that belongs to an individual. This is what guides us today in the modern state of Israel, and this is what guided King David. Here's a fellow, even though David is in charge of Jerusalem, not the Jebusite king anymore, and yet there's a Jebusite who's still there and he owns a piece of property. But because it is the angel who's pointing to that piece of property, David realizes that this is a piece of property that he needs to have, that is going to be part of this temple, of where the ark is going to sit and all that kind of stuff. So he goes there, and of course God gives him extra instruction. You know, you're going to have to set up an altar here. Okay, so he goes to this fellow, and he says, I'll buy it from you. And the guy, of course, here is the king who has just defeated his nation, right? And so he's willing to say, no, just take it, you know, like, leave me alone. I just want to do whatever you want, you know. But David makes it very, very clear. And here I think if we talk again about justice that has always been something that represents, that Jerusalem represents justice. David is carrying through that justice. No, I'm not going to steal your property. I'm going to pay you for it.
Right.
Yes, God wants me to build an altar here, but he doesn't want me to rob you of your land. That's not how we work in Judaism. That's not how we work, you know, when we're fulfilling God's commandments. And I think that's a very, very precious message, I think, that we can always all reach from. And of course, that is the beginning of history in many cases of Jerusalem, because it's at that moment in time that David realizes that indeed this is the place where the temple will stand. But, you know, here we have it all coming together. Kind of, now we know the temple's going to be in Jerusalem. It's going to be on this particular spot. This is where the ark is going to be. This is where there'll be an altar. And this is where David's son, Solomon, will actually build the first temple.
Because God instructed him to, because the angel showed him the property.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love the purchase piece. And of course, I flip back and relate it to Abraham buying the cave, for burial at Machpelah. I think these are significant claims that the Jewish people have on this part of the world.
Do you know that in the Talmud, now the Talmud is written about 1,500 years ago. Okay, so in the Talmud there's a statement that says there are 3 places in the Bible where it is specified that land was purchased in the land of Israel. The first one was what you mentioned, yes, the cave of Machpelah that's purchased by Abraham. The second is Jacob purchasing a field near Shechem when he comes back from Laban. And right, this is the third place, when right, David buys the threshing floor. And the Talmud said, why do we need to know all this information? And in all 3 cases, there's a fairly detailed explanation of the negotiations or the circumstances that led up to the purchase. Why do we need to know this? And the answer the Talmud gives is so that the nations will know that the land belongs to Israel. We will be able to, when the nations accuse us of theft, we can open up our Bible and say, see, it is recorded, this is our title deed. We bought these 3 places. Yeah. I always find that very ironic, because there are 3 places today in the land of Israel that are the most controversial places where nations all over the world, even those who say Israel has a right to exist, they'll say, but you don't have a right to be in Jerusalem, Samaria. Shechem is the capital of Samaria, where Jacob bought his field, and Judea, Hebron, the largest city in Judea where Abraham bought. Isn't that an irony? And I've always found, since my work with Christians these past 25 years, I have found it so interesting that really the only nations out there that I can open my Bible and say, you see, we right, bought it, right, is Christians. And maybe that's really the nations that the Talmud is referring to. The maybe Christians who will accept our answer based on the Bible.
Yeah, fascinating. Don't go away. When we come back, Danny and I explore the ruins of King David's palace. Hey everybody, we have something really exciting to tell you about. My good friend Isaac has been our guide on a number of our tours, and you have seen him on our television show, First Century Foundations. Isaac, tell them what we're doing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Shalom from Mount of Olives, Jerusalem. We have an amazing tour which has never ever been done before. We are going to cover all of the land of Israel, from Mount Herman in the north down to the Red Sea in the south, from Mediterranean Sea in the west, to the River Jordan in the east.
And here's the most amazing part. If you come on this tour, June 2024, this will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you to be a part of our live audience for the taping of 2 seasons of our television show, First Century Foundations. Don't miss this opportunity.
Make your next destination meaningful. Visit firstcenturyfoundations.com to find the tour that's right for you.
Having conquered Jerusalem, brought the Ark of the Covenant here, and then purchased the Temple Mount, King David dreamed of building God's temple. Yet God did not permit him. This must have broken his heart. The Bible records many psalms written by King David about his longing to be in God's house, God's love for Jerusalem, and its destiny as God's chosen resting place. But the temple would be built by Solomon, David's son. So David built up the area just south of the Temple Mount, the city of David. That's why I asked Danny to meet me here to learn what archaeology has revealed about this time in Jerusalem's history. Danny, we are here in the city of Jerusalem at the city of David, looking for evidence of this time period where David was king. So tell me the story.
Of David himself. I mean,
Yes.
the city is named after him, but where is he?
Right.
So historically, we know from the book of Samuel how he conquered the city.
Right.
And then the text tells us that he established a fortress, and he frankly established a capital and a dynasty. There must have been a palace. Where is David's palace was a riddle that is still not completely resolved, but we do have a good candidate. And the first hint of its location was found already in the 70s. This big retaining wall right behind you was found in the major excavations conducted here after the Six-Day War, when Israeli archaeologists could do research here. But they couldn't dig the top because that was Arab private property. However, such a retaining wall cannot be some peasant doing a terrace for growing olives. Okay, it has to be something big, something public, something monumental.
Right.
What were monumental things, buildings back then? Either the temple or the palace. Now the temple we know was up on the Temple Mount, so what are we left with?
Yes.
David's palace. This was the speculation of the archaeologists who uncovered it, Yigal Shiloh, but he passed away. He got cancer already in his 50s, and all the work here was halted for quite some time. However, 2003, the property on the top is purchased. It's in Israeli hands, and who was a young student here in the 70s, Eilat Mazar, now as Dr. Eilat Mazar is recruited to uncover the top of this retaining wall. And did she find David's palace? Let's find out.
The suspense is killing me.
Let me
go.
show you.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
In response to the unimaginably evil and inhumane attack Hamas inflicted on the nation of Israel and the war such atrocities have made, First Century Foundations remains fully committed to standing with Israel and supporting her specific needs in this desperate hour. Our special Emergency Response for Israel War Fund is now in place with 100% of all donations going directly to providing food, water, supplies, and shelter for displaced families, trauma support and care for those who are grieving and have witnessed atrocities, toys for children in bomb shelters, and critical supplies and equipment desperately needed. Thanks to our key partners across the land of Israel, First Century Foundations will channel your donations directly to where Israel needs it most right now. Now is the time to show Israel you care. Now is the time to stand with Israel 100%. Please give generously.
Danny, I've been to the city of David a number of times, but never gotten to come down here before. We are up on the other side of the retaining wall that you just showed us.
The very top of it, yes.
Okay, so have we found evidence of King David's palace?
That was the big question.
It is the big question.
And Eilat Mazar, the late Eilat Mazar, a dear friend, she passed away not too long ago. In 2003, she's recruited to dig all the way from the surface up there to bedrock and see, do we have the 10th century remains of some palatial complex?
Yeah.
And she gets all the way down to bedrock. And the only place where she finds early Iron Age architecture are those few stones.
Right.
If this is David's palace, this is all that's left of it, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
However, as she continues to explore the northern end of the strip she's excavating, come and see what she found over here.
Let's see.
Frankly speaking, already in the 1960s, Kathleen Kenyon, a British archaeologist, found in this area a capitol. This is a copy of it. A capitol of a big public building, which is usually used in palaces. Like the palace of Ahab's in his palace in Samaria had similar capitals. And we know the Moabites were using similar capitals in big public buildings. So that's the first hint. And your hand is on top of a foundation wall that is quite more visible, evident than what we've seen there.
Right.
And the most important part, in its foundation, Eilat Mazar finds not just 10th century pottery, but Phoenician 10th century pottery, which can be quite accurately dated to the 10th century. There's no doubt that there was a 10th century presence in the foundation, in the beginning of this wall.
Wow.
So based on the retaining wall, the capital, and the pottery dating to the 10th century, her conclusion is, this is it.
Wow.
We found it. Now, I must say, not all archaeologists agree with her. Is this really enough evidence? I wish we had a doormat saying, "Welcome to my palace, David."
Of course.
We haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
But the circumstantial evidence suggests this might be it. And hey, we haven't uncovered the whole area.
Okay.
Maybe
right.
behind this wall, there'll be more evidence of 10th century that can relate to David. That's mind-boggling. To think that your hand is on the very wall where David used to walk. Maybe this was his bedroom, maybe David and Bathsheba. the incident was all happening somewhere here. That's truly magical that archaeology can find evidence of such biblical stories from 3,000 years ago.
Unbelievable. Danny, thank you so much for that explanation.
My pleasure.
So exciting. King David was truly a man after God's own heart. He did not rest until he had found a permanent home for God's presence on earth, in the specific location where God desired to dwell. It was so incredible to take you to the city of David today and get up close to the archaeological remains this incredible king left behind. And as we discovered David's unbreakable connection to Jerusalem, I hope it helped you understand just how important this city truly was to Jesus as well. He was a descendant of King David, who also had an incredible passion for this city and a divine destiny here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please join me again next time, right here in Jerusalem, as we continue our archaeological quest to discover Jerusalem from Genesis to Jesus.